Welcome to the Pulse with Peter B. I'm your host, Peter Biancamano. Let's get you to the pulse on everything you need to know. And today's show is brought to you by the Hudson County Property Rights Coalition. And in our next segment, we're going to be joined by Ron Simoncini from the coalition. You're not going to want to miss it. He'll be joined with Josh. But we are starting our show today with, of course, Daria Lucia of At Hoboken Eats. Daria, great to see you again. How are you?
That one had a little extra flair to it this time. I like it.
It's 2021, right?
New year, new last name.
Exactly. And, we won't get into the personal about that. But anyway.
Shoot.
That's right, correct? Matt, we love you. Anyway, Daria, we are actually going to go outside of Hoboken
We're venturing out.
Right?
Yeah.
And we're going to head all the way, not all the way, it's like 15 minutes up River Road. That's 1416 River Road. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be talking about the River Palm Terrace.
Correct.
Which, Daria, I've heard from many, many people across the state that it is one of the most popular steakhouses in the state, correct?
Correct. And I have been going there since I was I don't even remember my first experience there. I was so young that apparently in one of my kindergarten classes, the teachers asked, "Oh, what did you guys do this weekend?" And I must have raised my hand and said, "I went to the River Palm Terrace with my parents." And my mom was like, "We need to take this girl to a freaking McDonald's." Are you kidding me? I was 5 years old. I don't even know how old you are. And I'm like, River Palm Terrace.
Get a Happy Meal, Daria.
Yeah, I know. Oh my goodness. What is wrong with my daughter? But I'm a big, big fan. And I have to be honest, I took Matt there for his birthday this past December. It was the first time I've ever gotten something different. Okay. We've had the exact same order for probably, 29? 27 years.
27. Wow, since 2 years old. Imagine that. All right, so since you brought
Let's
it
talk
up,
the menu.
Let's talk the menu. I mean, what was your go-to menu item at first, and what changed when you went with your wonderful fiance?
So the go-to there obviously is you're getting your steaks. I'm a big filet girl, so always get the filet. It comes with a nice massive crispy onion ring on top. But for appetizer, they have everything from crab cakes, clams oreganade, mussels, oysters, a lot of good seafood options. And they also have the best salad ever. It comes with your entree. It just comes with it automatically. And they come over with this big bowl of salad. And listen, you've never heard me talk about a salad on the show.
I was going to say.
Ever. I live
a salad this good.
I finished my salad, my parents' salad. I took Matt's salad. It's my favorite thing. I don't know what they do to it. They must have some amazing house dressing for the point that I'm actually bringing it up this much. It's so good.
So what makes it good?
I don't know.
Is it the dressing?
It's a secret.
Because
it's literally
lettuce,
cucumbers, tomatoes, blue cheese is optional, some cracked pepper on top. It's just so
Do you get the blue
good.
cheese? Maybe it's the blue cheese.
I get the extra blue cheese.
There you go. Okay.
But now we get our steak. Steak's phenomenal every single time. Always perfectly cooked. We've had experiences at steakhouses and then you don't go back. Literally never had a bad steak there in my entire life. And the sides, you get the hash brown. The hash brown's this big.
Wow.
Massive. I'm trying to face towards the camera.
I was going to say, yes.
Massive hash brown. And then french fries, cream spinach, and we try and limit it to just that.
So it's a first when we're in 2021 when Daria is giving us a signal holding a baby. I won't say with the hash brown, exactly. Anyway.
Food is my baby. The hash brown is my baby. It's the only baby coming
Hoboken Eats, baby. It's all about the food all the time.
No, but it's so good. And then the french fries and the cream spinach. And they have other things like sauteed spinach, sauteed broccoli. They have your typical vegetables and potatoes.
So the audience knows this. I mean, I don't eat red meat, but a lot of times you can go to these places and the seafood is outstanding, correct?
So their sushi menu.
Sushi.
That was the new thing I tried in December. It was phenomenal. So we actually had sushi for appetizer.
Did they always have it since you were 2 years old?
I don't know if it's that old because again I don't remember those early stage meals. But I've never been allowed to go with my dad, and he's like, "We're at the River Palm. What do you mean you're not going to get a steak?" So Matt and I started off with the sushi, and we got steak for dinner, and it was fantastic. And they have specialty rolls, your basic. We got a spicy tuna roll, I think a spicy salmon roll, and then one of their specialty rolls, which was phenomenal. I was in a food coma after dinner.
Interesting. Now, there, you go up River Road,
yeah.
and Greg, our cinematographer and editor, can tell you this. I mean, you can almost miss it.
Oh, 100%.
If you go up. There's the school next door. I believe it's the Washington School. I used to work up in Englewood Cliffs, so I know the area very well. But I'm serious. I mean, you drive by and you'll never notice it. It's hidden.
You wouldn't. It's on the corner, and it's you can easily drive right by it, especially because it's a little bit more like residentially around that area. It's a tight little road going up there.
Exactly.
So.
And if people know River Road, and when you're into West New York, and even at the beginning of Edgewater, it's like a 4-lane road, and then it gets into, like you said, that like up a hill, tiny. So you definitely want to make reservations now.
100%, 100%. And it's also really good to go like for drinks.
I was going to ask you about the drink menu.
Their whole front area, you walk in, you go to the right. The whole front area is this massive bar, like little bar area tables, like little. What's it called? You sit in a bench, booth. Oh, booth. And then they have the.
They were just created last year, apparently.
And then they go into the big dining room. It's nice, and they actually do have a whole tent set up outside for COVID right now.
Oh, very cool. Okay, yeah, it's in that little parking lot.
Yes.
Next door. See?
Yes.
I remember. Now, would you say that you spoke a little bit about the drinks menu?
Yes.
Full bar, like you said.
Full bar.
What is your go-to?
So I'm a wine drinker. Red wine with a steak all the time. I dabble in the martini realm a little bit, but I'm red wine.
Red wine. I like that.
Yeah, full through.
Now, would you say that this is a good date night spot?
100%.
Right.
Fellas or ladies, if you want to treat somebody to a really, really nice date night, you take them there. We actually, when we went for Matt's birthday, saw a celebrity sitting at the table right next to us.
You're just not going to say that and not say who it is.
Coco and Ice Cube.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, I think they live in that area.
Iced tea?
I think it's iced tea.
Yeah.
I think he lives
Thanks
in that
for
area.
not calling me out.
That's fine. He puts ice cubes in his iced tea. But it's iced tea. I think he lives in that area. I think they live in like the Alpine. Oh,
I was Law and Order SVU fangirling the entire time. And I was
really?
like, be cooler.
No, but you need to go up to them, Darren.
I
You
know.
need to be like, look, I'm from Hoboken Eats.
I know. I did not do that. But proven point, it's nice and it's swanky for some celebrities it was a Tuesday night that we went.
And that's probably the perfect night, right?
Yes. And it just has a nice romantic atmosphere inside too. It's a really, really good spot. And you see a lot of larger parties when you go in there too. Tables of 6, 7, 8. It's just a place to go have a really, really good meal.
So there you go. Venture out to Edgewater, I guess, right?
And Fairlawn.
Right next door, yeah.
Yep, they have another location there.
Oh, they do?
They do.
Did not know that.
Yep.
You'll learn something new every day here on The Pulse, right? All right, Daria. Well, thank you for joining us. Good to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And we look forward to having you on future shows. That's the River Palm Terrace, 1416 River Road in Edgewater or in Fairlawn. And I'm unprepared, or else I would tell you that address. But I'm sure we'll put it right here on the bottom of your screen. Daria DeLucia of that Hoboken Eats. Folks, as mentioned, when we come back, Ron Simoncini will be in studio with Josh from the Hudson County Property Rights Coalition. You are not going to want to miss it. We will be right back.
My story is a New Jersey story, and it all started right here on Anderson Street in Raritan Borough, where my parents owned a bar and restaurant and raised their family. I'm Jack Chittarelli. Jersey's where I started and built 2 successful Main Street businesses, creating jobs and opportunities for fellow New Jerseyans. It's where Melinda and I raise our 4 children. This is my home, and yours. But New Jersey is broken. You know it, and I know it. And we're going to fix it together. Every one of us has our New Jersey story. As governor, I'll work hard every day to ensure that our children and their children can write their own.
Welcome back to The Pulse with Peter B. This is Ron Simoncini from the Hudson County Property Rights Coalition. I'm here with Josh Sotomayor. And we're going to talk a little bit today about what's happening in Hudson County towns and cities and how that will affect property values going forward. So Josh, thank you very much for joining me on this.
Oh, thanks for coming. I know it will be an informative and insightful. Maybe what is the Hudson County Property Rights Association?
So about 15 years ago, I was part of a group that started up the Miles Square Taxpayers Association to deal with rent control issues in Hoboken. And that was a very successful effort. It ended up creating a new environment for rent control properties in Hoboken that allowed owners to have a far greater level of security and stability with their tenancy as a result of resolving some rent control issues in the rent control office. As time went on, more and more property owners who owned other properties in Hudson County were facing similar problems. And so we ended up with a Jersey City Property Owners Association. Then we ended up with a Union City Housing Initiative. We ended up with a Weehawken Taxpayers for Fairness Association. And each of those organizations was founded to deal with a specific issue that the town was foisting upon property owners at the time. It occurred to us about 6 months ago that we should roll all that up into one, because some of the issues that Hudson County property owners are facing are common to all Hudson County property owners, and in particular in COVID, with rent freezes, eviction freezes, et cetera, it was appropriate for us to have one grandfather organization that can run these programs. And so that's how that came to be.
So are a lot of the challenges that property owners are facing currently, I guess in COVID times, coming out of the county level or the state level or municipal level? Where's the real crux of the issue?
So the county doesn't really assert itself in property rights, particularly because its interest in property rights is the share of property taxes that it collects. It doesn't really have the ability to create property policy in Hudson County, or if it does, it wisely stays out of that, right? Mostly it's municipal, but because we have some state senators who are also mayors, we see that Hudson County politicians will go to the state to pass legislation that will affect all of Hudson County, when in truth, those mayors should probably be staying within their own boundaries and making policy for the towns that they run, rather than using their state office to come back and essentially rule a county when they don't really have the political platform to do so.
Interesting. Well, I mean, we know that many of Hudson County politicians are way beyond their expiration date. Let's put it that way, to say it mildly, as I say everything mildly, as viewers know. So what is the principal issue for the organization? What is the challenge of the property owner? I know a number of property owners, people that live in their own home or people that live in a small apartment building with 4 to 6 units, and they get their rent, they get their livelihood from that rent. And I know they've been complaining to me both about vacancy issues in the time of COVID and then tax increases from here and there. So what's the issue that the property owners that you've been representing have been challenged by?
So the folks that you just described are the most vulnerable people in the property landscape right now. And they are so because they don't have eviction available to them. And if somebody decides not to pay their rent, there is literally no way for them to collect that rent or get the person out of the apartment. Now, in many cases, the people aren't paying rent because COVID's impacted their livelihood and they don't have the funds to pay the rent. In some cases, probably a small number of cases, but in some cases, people are just gaming the system. They know they can't be evicted, and so they don't pay rent. And so when evictions become possible again, which looks like it'll be sometime in the latter half of this year, the courts will be deluged with eviction cases. Some of the people will come to the court and say, I just couldn't pay the rent. Some of the people will skip and rent someplace else, and some of the people will make a deal with their landlord. How that all really works out, I think, really remains to be seen. But what I hear from most landlords is that 90% or more of their tenants are paying rent. Mm-hmm. And that conforms, right, with the level of unemployment. Because since COVID, we have 10% people unemployed, and about 10% of people are unable to pay their rent. That's probably just about right. The problem isn't that people can or can't pay the rent. The problem is that the people who can't pay the rent are not getting direct subsidies to help them. That helps everyone because the property owner collects the rent that the tenant who cannot afford to pay the rent currently can pay because they get subsidized. That's how the system should be working. Instead, what the state has done is it's protected everybody. And that's similar to what the government does at the federal level. They give everybody money in COVID instead of saying, well, who's been affected? If only 10% of the people, and only 10% is the wrong way to put it because it's a lot of people, and there's no sense in anybody that there is a lack of empathy toward people who've been affected by COVID. But those are the people we should be trying to help.
Oh, absolutely.
Why are we freezing an entire marketplace because 10% of the people need help? We shouldn't do it that way.
Well, I think there's definitely a strong argument for means testing any sort of government aid so that people that need it get it and people that don't actually need it don't get it. How does the sort of blanket catch-all, quote unquote protections that exist right now in the COVID times, how does that hurt the community? Is there any negatives for the community outside of the direct landlord?
Yeah, let's go back to your small owner, right? A large owner who owns 200 units, if he is having trouble collecting 10% of his rent, that's really going to have a mathematical algorithm to it. he's probably got 20 vacancies because he's got so much critical mass that he's not outside of the percentage that that's unable to pay. But somebody who has 6 apartments, what happens if he gets unlucky and 3 can't pay? Or 2 can't pay and 1 games the system? And now he can't pay his mortgage. He can't pay himself because his job is to take care of those properties, right? That's his income. Those people are very vulnerable, and there's going to be a lot of jingle mail. Jingle mail is when somebody takes the keys to their property and sends it back to the bank.
Oh, wow. That will definitely be sad. And that'll have a negative impact on the character of communities. You won't have the local, small, people that own their property. It'll all get scooped up by large development companies that don't care about the neighborhood and the community. So what steps locally or statewide is the Hudson County Property Rights Organization pushing to ameliorate and address this?
Right. So I think we're content to appear. We're content to talk about legislation. We appeared when Senator Stack tried to enact a condo moratorium, a condo conversion moratorium in Hudson County. That bill was later vetoed by the governor. And Senator Stack came back with another version of the bill that actually was rational or reasonable. The property rights guy in me says you shouldn't be restricting any property uses. But that function of government in filtering these things out is something that gets informed by advocates like myself. And so when something comes up, I'm always going to be there to talk about its impact on property. That impact typically is the unfairness or the inequity that happens with the small property owner or the single family homeowner. When the government seeks to regulate large property owners and reduce their income, the taxes that they lose as a result have to come from somewhere. And the last resort is the single family homeowner. He's the one who bears the load, or she's the one who bears the load of that regulation. And it has never settled into the mind of politicians that that's what happens. And who is it who votes for them? Those small homeowners. And so they need a little bit of education. We try to do that. We try to do it in as gentle a way as possible and cause as few problems as possible. But the fact of the matter is, it's a very hard sell to people to say, don't try to protect everybody, because their instinct is to do that. They think they're speaking to the voter for their vote, but actually what they're doing is they're reducing the viability of property in their community.
Well, I mean, if you explain to them that eventually their bill is going to get higher and that their neighborhood is going to be devoid of people like themselves and their neighbor that owns a couple of units, I think that's a very strong case.
It is, but it's hard to sell it, right? Because if a politician comes out and says, I gave you rent control, you won't pay higher rent, the tenant's not going to realize that his only increase was going to be 1% anyway. It's the single family homeowner who realizes it when he gets a 4% tax increase.
Well, it's a very inexpensive way to buy votes, to tell that to the renter.
But the education, I think, comes out, and there are people like in Jersey City who did an eight meeting analysis of rent control and came up with good ideas that if they focus on it and they apply themselves to it, they could come up with good ideas. So on behalf of the Hudson County Property Rights Coalition, I want to thank Peter B., of course, my old friend, and Josh for hosting us here and participating in an interview. I hope you found it informative, and we're looking forward to seeing more of you later. Be right back with more Pulse with Peter B.
My story is a New Jersey story, and it all started right here on Anderson Street in Brereton Borough, where my parents owned a bar and restaurant and raised their family. I'm Jack Chittarelli. Jersey's where I started and built 2 successful Main Street businesses, creating jobs and opportunities for fellow New Jerseyans. It's where Melinda and I raise our 4 children. This is my home, and yours. But New Jersey is broken. You know it, and I know it. And we're going to fix it together. Every one of us has our New Jersey story. As governor, I'll work hard every day to ensure that our children and their children can write their own.
Welcome back to The Pulse with Peter B. I'm guest host Nicolette Ayala, and joining us is our sports insider guru, Matt Waymeyer. Matt, what is going on?
I'm just thrilled to be on the debut episode of The Pulse with Nicolette A.
Hey.
You know, it's I hope Peter doesn't take offense to that. This is his baby, but The Pulse with Nicolette A, I could get used to that.
Nice ring to it.
Yeah, it does.
So, Matt, I figure we just dive right in. It is playoff weekend, wild card weekend for football.
Yeah.
In the NFL. Let's talk about this.
Let's dive right in.
We got Ravens and Titans first game.
Yeah, and the big storyline with that game is, of course, Lamar Jackson. He's a former MVP. He's an all-pro, all-world, all-elite, all-everything, but he's not been all-pro has not been successful as a playoff quarterback, and the numbers are pretty staggering. For his regular season career, his QB rating 102.6. That's, again, elite. That's top flight. In the playoffs, it dips all the way down to 68.3. He's only completing just over half of his pass attempts in the playoffs. And, you know, the old saying, the old cliche goes, you got to get the monkey off your back. Until you get that first win, until you prove that you can succeed in the playoffs and under the spotlight with everybody watching you, that's going to be the prevailing dominant storyline. So he's got to step up. But the thing I worry about if I'm the Ravens, if I'm a Ravens fan, his 2 playoff losses prior, both at home. This one's on the road. I know there's no fans, but I still think there's something to be said for a home road environment. So to be on the road in Tennessee against a very good Titans team, it's going to be a big hill to climb for Lamar Jackson of Baltimore.
And Derrick Henry.
Yeah, let's not forget about him.
Let's not forget about him.
No, the former Alabama running back. He is by far and away the best running back in football. Just turned 27 days ago. Still very much in his prime. 2,027 yards this year, 5.4 yards per carry, and he happens to be red hot. He's coming off a career high 250 yards in a Week 17 victory at Houston. So he is running roughshod like he's never run before. He's led the NFL in rushing 2 consecutive years. So the Ravens gave up the second fewest points in the NFL this year. Their defense is stout. It always is. But have they faced a guy like Derrick Henry, on a week-by-week basis? Of course not. So that's going to be a huge challenge for that, what is a very good defense, admittedly.
And it's also a repeat of last year.
Yeah, repeat of last year and a repeat of Week 11 in Tennessee. The Titans won in overtime. Great game, 30-24. Henry in that game, 28 carries, 133. Lamar Jackson, kind of pedestrian that day, 17-29. He had a pick, he had a TD. Ryan Tannehill, though, let's not forget about him. He's had his career rejuvenated since leaving Miami, getting out of the clutches of Adam Gase. That's another whole storyline for another day. But Tannehill that day, 22 of 31, 259, 2 touchdowns. He did throw a pick, but he was the better quarterback that day. If he outshines Jackson again, the Titans are moving on.
Oof. All right, so let's talk about Bears and Saints.
Let's do it. Drew Brees, he's been interesting to me because, again, he's up there in the Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Mahomes, Jackson class of elite quarterbacks in the NFL, but he got hurt. He missed a few games in the middle of the year. So he had 9 starts before getting hurt. Look at these numbers. 73.5% completion, 18 touchdowns, 3 picks, 110 rating. After the injury, he's been good, but not quite Drew Brees, completing 60.9% of his passes, a 13% dip, throwing touchdowns at the same rate, about 2 per game, but he's thrown 3 interceptions, and the QB rating 94.7, which is still excellent, but not elite level like it was before the injury. So that's one thing I'm a little concerned about. The Saints are at home. They're taking on this Jekyll and Hyde Bears team. They started 5-1. They lost 6 in a row to drop to 5-7. Then they recovered. They won 3 of their last 4. They're 8-8. They stuck into the playoffs. So, again, anything can happen, but I think at the 3 games on Sunday, I like the Saints more than I would the other favorites in this one. But don't count out the Bears.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then last but not least, Browns versus Steelers.
This is another interesting game to me because the Browns are in a position where they have to beat a very good team 2 weeks in a row. And it's been proven time and again in the NFL that, it's hard to beat a good team once.
Right.
To do it 2 weeks in a row. And the Browns, last week, they had a sizable lead. I think they were up 24-7 on the Steelers. They're cruising towards that first playoff berth in 18 years. The Steelers come back. They make it interesting. They score 2 late touchdowns. They got a 2-point conversion in there. They couldn't get over the hump, and the Browns hung on to win 24-22. But again, I think the Steelers, even though they lost the most recent game, they're in the more advantageous position because they don't have to beat a good team twice in a row. The Browns do.
Right.
The Browns do. So it'll affect, each team's game plan. What do the Browns do differently? That's up to, I was going to say it's up to their head coach, Kevin Stefanski, but that's not the case, Nicolette, right?
That's true. That's true. It seems like everybody's getting the Rona, so see
yeah.
what happens. We got to...
Yeah, it's bad. Kevin Stefanski is not going to be serving as head coach for the Browns on Sunday, like you said. He and I believe 2 other staffers and 2 players came down with COVID, so that restricts him or any of the players from obviously participating in Sunday's game. I think this is huge because it's not as simple as if I'm Kevin Stefanski, I'm not just going to take the playbook and say, here, go coach. It's not that simple. It is a huge transition. Making the transition got to be Mike Prefer, I believe. He's the special teams coordinator. He's going to be acting head coach. But not to diminish what special teams coaches do. Joe Judge, after all, was a special teams coach. Look how he did in his first year as a head coach with the Giants. But to take over that responsibility with little to no preparation in a playoff game, that's going to be an enormous responsibility on his shoulders, and one that the Browns hope he's up for because, like I said, they had not qualified for the playoffs since 2002. Their fans are excited. They're back in it for the first time in forever. But it could be a one and done. If they don't have the expertise, the head coaching expertise of Kevin Stefanski, that's going to be a major hurdle to climb. And let's not forget, too, this is a Browns team that lost to the Jets mere weeks ago. Now, a big reason why was because they had a lot of their offensive weapons out because of COVID again. And we can't really dismiss the effects of a COVID recovery because look at your Patriots. Look at Cam Newton. Okay, now to me he is the prime example of the havoc that this disease can wreak because I believe the Patriots started either 3-0 or 3-1. Cam Newton looked like Cam Newton. The Patriots are rolling. He goes down. He has not been the same.
No, absolutely not.
Now some players do bounce back. He clearly didn't. He had a miserable last 2/3 of the season, and the Patriots missed the playoffs in forever. So I think this might be going on with some of the Browns players that missed that Jets game. We don't know what their recovery process is like. We don't know how compromised they're going to be for this playoff game against the Steelers. So that's going to be a storyline to watch. And the Steelers, too, they started 11-0. They lost 4. They looked like they were going to cruise towards a 7th, I think, Super Bowl title, which would be the most all time. Lost 4 of their last 5, and the only game they won, they shouldn't have won. They were trailing 24-7 against the Colts. They came back and won 28-24. Only thing preventing them from a 5-game losing streak. So this, I said the Bears were kind of Jekyll and Hyde. This Steelers team is Jekyll and Hyde. So it's going to be a very interesting matchup.
Very interesting, very interesting. All right, Matt. So back against the brick wall.
Back against the wall.
Let's go. Who are we going for? Out of all 6 teams.
All right, let's start with the game we just talked about, the Browns and Steelers. I'm going to say that the Browns find a way. It might be my heart talking more than my head because I love their underdog story. Baker Mayfield's put it together this year. I'd love to see the Browns give that fan base something to cheer for at least one more week. I'm going with the Browns. We talked about the Saints and the Bears. I do like the Saints in that one. They're home. I just don't trust the Bears. And the Ravens and Titans. I'm going Titans. I don't want to go Titans because I like Lamar Jackson a lot. I want to see him get that first playoff win. I don't think it happens this year. I think Derrick Henry runs wild and the Titans move on.
Okay. All right. Well, Matt, it was a pleasure doing this. I feel like we should do this more often.
We should. Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you for joining us on this week's show. Today's show is brought to you by the Hudson County Property Rights Coalition. Join us next week for The Pulse on everything you need to know. I'm Nicolette Ayala. Have a great week, everyone.
I'm Jack Chitterelli. Jersey's where I started and built 2 successful Main Street businesses, creating jobs and opportunities for fellow New Jerseyans. It's where Melinda and I raise our 4 children. This is my home. And yours. But New Jersey is broken. You know it, and I know it. And we're going to fix it together.
The Pulse with Peter B. is a proud partner of Eyes on NJ.